All right, we're back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. It's our final segment this morning. Professor Thomas Schwartz coming with us from over at Vanderbilt. Just to get ahead, all right, we know by this time next week we'll know who our new president is.
We should. I mean, we know in 2000 it was very close.
Well, that's right. And again, it could be a very close race. It could be. So with that said, you know, when we have a new president in place, the first 100 days, essentially, do we see that being any different for either of these candidates than we've seen in the past, and kind of lay out what happens, you know, in the immediate days after a new president takes office?
Well, some of this depends on the nature of the election. If it's a clear mandate for one or the other. In the case of Hillary,
what makes a mandate? I'm sorry.
Well, mandate might be something close to President Obama's win in, say, against Romney, where he won by about 4 points or 5 points. If it's a clear mandate, I think what you'll see from Hillary would be an attempt to make an argument for bipartisanship, maybe an immediate attempt, for example, to get an immigration bill, something that would show real achievement, something that would show a direction in the country and maybe a change in the mood. I would see her probably immediately calling up Paul Ryan and say, can we work together, this sort of thing. With Trump, I think it's going to be completely a wild card. His 100 days would be extraordinary, and I think there'll be a lot of unsettled feelings within the markets. What direction will he take? Where will he move first? He's talked about a special session on Obamacare, on trade, on immigration. That would be, I think, a formula for all sorts of deadlock, since it's unlikely if he wins, I think it's unlikely he'd have a mandate. He'd probably win rather narrowly, and I think the Democrats would be in a position to block some of the things that he wants to do, but it still would be a wild card in terms of what expectations we could have.
Okay, and part of it too will be what happens, and this is one reason both parties say, look, if you don't like either of these candidates, still go vote. And
yes.
So how are things shaping up then with what kind of Senate or House the winner will end up dealing with?
The House is more than likely to stay Republican. That seems fairly clear from most of the measurements. The Senate is the wild card, and it looks, the Real Clear Politics today has it at 51-49 Republican. It's gone back and forth between that and 50-50 Democrat, and then if it's the Democrats in the White House, they would have the majority. It looks like it's going to be very, very tightly divided Senate, and that will certainly make the Supreme Court nomination issue a hot one. It will make issues related to filibustering and the rest also contentious. You could have a continuation of deadlock.
We heard, I don't know if it's so much both candidates, or are they looking at all to trying in any way to help some of these other races?
Hillary was, certainly, and they've certainly spread around money to a number of the Democratic Senate candidates. Trump has been less directed toward any other campaigns, but if he does better than what people are seeing, he will lift some of the other Republicans with him, it's thought. When Hillary was looking much stronger earlier in the month, she was spending and willing to work to try and elect Senate candidates, for example, for the Republicans in North Carolina and Pennsylvania and Florida. That looks less likely now. She's more focused now on her own campaign.
Okay, and as far as the war chests the both campaigns have?
Well, it favors Hillary, although, of course, Donald Trump, if he really was committed to putting his own money in, could do that. I mean, the question of whether he is or not, he said he will. Whether he has or the real desire to spend that sort of money, he could probably do that.
Yeah, but with 1 week left then before the election, and I noticed this just in our newsroom this morning, I just see a lot of commercials.
Yes,
right? Local ones too.
Right.
So is it really for, especially if money was tight for some candidates, they wait till later maybe,
yes.
And that's when we start seeing the flood. This next week is when all the buys are going to happen?
Well, many of the buys have already happened. I mean, a lot of the airtime's been committed, some of the special programs and that, highly rated programs, people have already bought commercials in it. But I do think you could see a flood of money coming in and perhaps longer, maybe buys of airtime, longer buys of airtime if that's decided. Trump has never really been fully as committed to television advertising as Hillary, so that may not be where he ends up spending his money.
Well, where else can you spend the money? I'm just wondering, for spending, you know, I always just think advertising. I guess yes. You can do direct mail, you can do TV, you can do radio, but what other things will they spend money on? They have to spend money to organize these rallies and everything?
Well, money to organize rallies. I mean, he could hire on last-minute staffers to try to get people out to the polls.
Going door to door, or you're talking about literally shuttles to maybe help folks who have trouble getting around to get there?
I mean, he has not the ground game that Hillary does. Hillary is the Democrats are far better organized and driven than the Republicans in this case. But Trump could try and flood some states with money with the idea of trying to hire or bring on and make sure turnout comes up. But it's going to be it's a stretch to do it this late in the game.
Okay, so what's most important then for them this late in the game?
Turnout,
So
getting your voters to the polls.
Getting the voters to the polls is the absolute most important thing right
crucial.
now.
Getting your voters to the polls, and that's really where it's central is because
it's funny, the weather on Tuesday can have a factor.
Weather could be a factor,
I mean,
especially in those states. There are states like Pennsylvania that only have election day voting. Now, with early voting, of course, that's a little bit different. So some of the key battlegrounds are only that day, and then the weather will matter in that day. And even things like the Philadelphia transit strike could make a difference in Pennsylvania.
See, all these little subtle things in the key states can make a huge, huge
Pennsylvania,
difference.
Ohio, Florida, all of those sorts of things.
What are they saying still for Utah? Is that
Utah? Utah, though, the Trump or somebody has put on, for example, robocalls that are denouncing Evan McMullen as a closet homosexual and things like that. There is some dirty, very dirty politics there. They're trying. I think they're hopeful that they can get enough Republicans to come back to defeat this third-party challenger, and probably, given the sort of nature, people want to vote for one of the two candidates. But Utah is unusual because of the high Mormon vote.
Right, that's why I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
And back in Wisconsin, I'm just wondering, what do you think now the status of the relationship is between Trump and Paul Ryan?
Well, Ryan said yesterday that he voted for everyone on the ticket.
Okay.
He did not mention Trump's name.
He gave the indication he did vote for him while but he just said he wouldn't work for him. Is that what it was?
That's right. He's not campaigning for him, and he's not showing up. Trump is doing a rally today. Scott Walker will be there, the governor, but Ryan will not.
This is the Speaker of the House.
Right.
A very powerful Republican.
I think I think deep down he abhors Trump, sees him as dangerous, but somehow feels that he has to, as Speaker of the House, vote for him.
Okay, and is that what some of these Republicans are walking the line, recognizing that if he wins, and he certainly could, they're going to have to deal with him, so they don't risk going too far one way or the other?
I think they have the feeling that they're out of sync with their base, that the base is enthusiastic about a person that they are not, and that creates real problems for leadership. If you can't lead if no one's following.
But you're elected by your constituents. What's changed? Why are they not in line with the base, or why is the base not in line with them? What's changed?
Well, Trump exercised an extraordinarily brilliant campaign, populist campaign that went around many of these established leaders. Paul Ryan won re-election in his district, will win re-election with 80% of the vote. That's not, he's in his district, he's fine, but Trump exercised a brilliant campaign of populist indignation and anger, and was able to tap into enough of the Republican base to win it because of the errors of many others. I think his campaign was strategically brilliant, but the opposition of Republicans was also hopeless. I mean, they did not unite around a non-Trump candidate who might have been able to defeat him until the very end. So I think when historians go back to this, I'm not sure how they'll write the story, because there's numerous things had to happen in order for Donald Trump to be in this position. Yeah,
everything came together. And when you talk about, I agree, what he did worked. Is why he never really changed. I think he does have a lot of smart advisors around him that try maybe to steer him well, and he does what he thinks. And why wouldn't you? It's worked for him, right?
Yes.
It's worked for him, and I really believe, I don't know that there was ever any, sit down where they're in a boardroom going over all these strategies. And I think he just said, look, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to say what's on my mind. And I think for him, I'm not saying the campaign's been easy. When I say easy, I guess I mean it's not hard to be yourself.
No.
And that's what he sold, and that's what resonated with his supporters, right?
This was a celebrity candidacy, a celebrity culture, and he was able to, he had full name recognition. He had a lot of those sorts of things going for him, and then he had a divided Republican establishment that didn't figure out what he was trying to do.
Is that, do you think, to this day, because early on they just thought he was yet again a novelty that would fade away?
They feared him running as a third party and defeating them that way, and so they tried tried to bring him into the tent to keep him from breaking off into a third-party candidacy that they thought would kill their chances. But in bringing him in, he ended up taking
so they
over.
brought him in thinking, we'll bring him in. He'll have a short run here. Eventually he'll leave, but then we don't have to worry about him as a third party. And we took care of it. But they underestimated him, brought him in, and then he loses. And now it's an amazing political story. However it's written, the history books down there, whether he wins or loses, it's going to be amazing to look at
what happened,
how it all played out, and so much more. We've got a lot to be packed into a week, but again, next week at this time, probably, we'll know who the next president of the United States will. Professor, as always, it's a pleasure. Thank you for coming on, sir, and thank you for the phone calls. We'll take a break. Programming note about tomorrow right after this. Stay with us.